Good evening and welcome to Look North. Our top story tonight. A man's arrested after a suspected firearm and a suspicious package sparked an evacuation of part of a Leeds hospital. We'll be live at the scene. Also tonight, a coroner rules that a Leeds student was likely to have lived if he'd been given a face-to-face appointment.
To hear them acknowledge that they've made a mistake and that they've taken the necessary changes to prevent it happening again, that is the only positive that can come out of this.
With over 40% of TransPennine services cancelled in the first 4 days of this week, growing calls for the rail company to be nationalised. And on the search for the ugliest dogs, we speak to the owners of 2 that make the shortlist.
And the cold weather continues with a warning from the Met Office for some dense fog in places. I'll be back later in the programme with all the details.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Counter-terrorism police have arrested a man after a suspected firearm and a suspicious device were discovered outside St James's Hospital in Leeds. Some parts of the hospital had to be evacuated. Specialist teams are still on site and Corinne Wheatley is there for us this evening. Corinne, what can you tell us?
Good evening, Amanda. Yes, well, a police cordon has been in place at St James's Hospital all day today, although the area cordoned off by police has been reduced now, so it's a bit easier for people to get around the site. Now, the investigation into this incident is being led by counter-terror police. We know that a man was arrested earlier this morning and is still in custody, and that officers are searching a vehicle and a number of premises. Now, in terms of the impacts on the running of St James's, it's a busy hospital. It did cause some disruption for both staff and for patients as hospital bosses try to keep people safe. A bomb disposal unit blocking the road at St James's Hospital. Army specialists were called in after a suspicious package was found outside the Gledhow wing early this morning. Counter-terror police say that at around 5 a.m, a 27-year-old man from Leeds was arrested on suspicion of firearms and explosive offences after being found in possession of a suspected firearm and a suspicious device in the hospital grounds. Some wards were evacuated as a precautionary measure. Outside, patients arriving at the hospital were redirected around the police cordon.
I was directed to a specific unit and couldn't get there, so it's a bit confusing. And I suppose you're a bit curious about what's going on.
It's scary. I said to my friend, I says, I'm a bit scared now. I says, I don't go for my appointment. Are we going to be safe?
Outpatients with appointments were asked to attend as normal unless told otherwise, although maternity outpatient appointments were rescheduled. The hospital said it wanted to reassure the public that maternity inpatients were safe. Visitors were not allowed on Gledhow or Lincoln Wing today, and anyone who wanted to use the walk-in GP blood service was asked to go to another site. Meanwhile, counter-terror police say they don't believe there's any ongoing risk to the public, and an investigation to establish the full circumstances is ongoing. Well, it is a much quieter scene at St James's Hospital this evening, although police are still on site. Leeds Teaching Hospitals Trust says it is trying to get back to business as usual this evening, so people are being moved back onto the wards that were evacuated earlier and visiting has resumed on all the wings. Now, it's caused some understandable concern, but police say this is being treated as an isolated incident. And while counter-terror police do their work, police in the Leeds district say they'll be working with the local community to reassure people and to keep them informed.
Thank you very much. Next tonight, a Leeds law student who died after 4 remote GP consultations was likely to have lived if he'd been given a face-to-face appointment sooner. An inquest heard the failure to see David Nash in person during lockdown was a missed opportunity. Despite repeated calls to the NHS 111 and his local surgery, he died shortly after being admitted to hospital. His parents said they don't want anyone to go through the anguish they've suffered. As Phil Bodmer reports.
Wise, loving and funny. A coroner's description of David Nash. The 26-year-old died in November 2020 after developing mastoiditis in his ear, causing an abscess on the brain. An inquest in Wakefield this week heard he made a number of calls to a Leeds GP practice and NHS 111 over a period of just 19 days.
Got pain behind both eyes, my sinuses, my back and my neck, and I've got temperature as well.
Sinuses?
Sinuses in the back of the neck, so like in the cheek area.
His first phone call to Burley Park Medical Centre was on October the 14th. He rang again on the 23rd and 28th, complaining of neck pain, headaches and fever. His final call was with an advanced nurse practitioner on November the 2nd. It's this fourth call which the coroner said should have resulted in an urgent face-to-face consultation. That same day, as his condition deteriorated, David made 5 calls to NHS 111 and was finally taken to hospital by ambulance. He died 2 days later. In reaching a narrative conclusion, the Assistant Coroner Abigail Coombs told the inquest on the 2nd of November 2020 there was a missed opportunity to direct David to seek face-to-face care during his GP appointment. She went on to say had he been directed by the GP practice, it's more likely than not he would have undergone neurosurgery approximately 10 hours earlier than he did, which at the time, she said, it's more likely than not would have been successful.
He was our wonderful son, brother and friend. He had a strong sense of right and wrong and always looked out for others. We in turn have spent 2 years seeking answers on his behalf and to make sure that others don't die as David did. We know that is what he would have wanted.
David's parents, Andrew and Anne, said they were both saddened and vindicated by the findings.
The inquest gives us a sense of closure, but the apology from the medical centre that treated David only came through yesterday, and that was an apology we've been seeking for a longer period.
Like Andrew, I wish the apology from the practice had been slightly earlier, but we certainly always realised, I think in our heart of hearts, that he should have been seen that day. It's been a long struggle, and I think our grief is always going to be with us. We always will have grief and carry that with us because that's part of David.
The coroner praised the family's dignity shown during the inquest, saying she hoped they'd found some of the answers to the questions they'd asked. Phil Bodmer, BBC Look North, Wakefield.
And our thoughts are with David's family. Well, earlier I spoke to Dr. Richard Vaughtry, who is a Leeds GP and former chair of the Medical Association. I asked him if we needed to be concerned about more consultations taking place remotely.
Yeah, this was clearly a really tragic case for everyone involved, and our heart goes out to the relatives of this man. GP practices have been trying their level best to see as many patients as possible face to face, but many of our patients are now actively requesting telephone consultations because it is more convenient for them. They can have that consultation from home or work without coming into the surgery, but it's clearly important that the clinician gets the right balance, and if they require to examine the patient and see the patient face to face, that they make that opportunity available to patients, and that's what practices are trying to do.
Yeah, there are obviously benefits to having an appointment remotely, but in this case, the coroner ruled that David Nash was likely to have lived if he had been given that face-to-face appointment. Do we need to be concerned that this could happen again?
Well, clearly, clinicians are becoming increasingly experienced with telephone consultations, which, as you said, have increased since the pandemic. But many clinicians now will insist that patients do come into the surgery for a face-to-face consultation and for a physical examination. In fact, we're seeing more patients than ever before, and that's one of the reasons why practices are so busy.
But more appointments are now being made with non-GP clinicians. Again, is valuable expertise being lost as a result of this?
Well, one of the concerns that we have is that we're not recruiting and retaining enough GPs into our service. It's one of the problems that we have on a day-to-day basis, that there isn't the capacity in our workforce, not just in terms of GPs, but practice nurses and others. We're really pleased that some new healthcare professionals are joining us, like paramedics and pharmacists and physios. But nevertheless, we still do need more GPs, and we need the government to have a proper workforce plan to not only recruit more GPs, but particularly to retain the experienced GPs that we've got in the service, who all too often are leaving because of the workload burden that they're facing.
It's Dr. Richard Vaughtry, thank you for your time this afternoon. You're watching Friday's Look North, still to come on tonight's programme. Olympic triathlete Jess Learmonth talks about coming back after a serious hip injury.
Basically, my leg was hanging off, really. It's just never great.
Now, there are growing calls for the train company TransPennine Express to have its contract taken away. After months of delays and cancellations, the service level deteriorated even further this week. Figures show between Monday and Thursday the company cancelled 553 of the 1,308 trains it operates. That's around 42%. And by 4 p.m. this afternoon, a further 55 had to be cancelled. Our transport correspondent Spencer Stokes went on his own journey to see just how bad things are.
7:20 in the morning and the Manchester-bound platform at Leeds is deserted. Passengers appear to be staying away as a result of back-to-back train cancellations. The next fast train to Manchester won't leave for an hour. Crossing the Pennines involves getting an overcrowded stopping train. So how long will this 43-mile journey take? On board, we meet Heather, heading to work in Huddersfield.
I've just texted my boss to let them know that I will be around 20 minutes late, and there's nothing really we can do about that. They're very understanding, but it's a consistent issue. It's getting worse. When I first started, I never had to do this, and now I do it, on and off most weeks. The only train running. It's the only one out of, I think, 5 trains this morning. Just this one was running through to Huddersfield. So that's why I'm on this one. I am learning to drive, but again, in this country we should be able to have a good public transport service in the north, and we just don't.
And we hope you have a great onward journey.
30 minutes after leaving Leeds, the train reaches Huddersfield, where it terminates. On the platform, Richard, who's heading in the opposite direction and has been waiting since 7:15.
An hour and a half of cancellations. I've been commuting to Leeds since 1990. And in all that time, it's never been as bad as this. There just seems to be a certain apathy towards it all. People just accept this is the way it is.
Up above, the station clock has stopped and ticket machines are out of service. This feels like a railway fraying at the edges. So I've finally made it onto a Manchester-bound train. This is Stanage Tunnel. We're going underneath the Pennines, but it's nearly 2 hours since I initially arrived at Leeds Station. TransPennine say the problems are caused by very high levels of sickness and a training backlog. And they say they're working flat out to tackle the issues. But Labour want the government to step in.
I called on the government to strip TransPennine Express of its contract. The management have comprehensively failed. They were told as much as 7 years ago to start recruiting drivers, and they've not done that. They've not invested in their workforce, and that's exactly why we're in the mess we're in today.
TransPennine are owned by international transport firm First Group. The Rail Minister suggested this week the company has just a few months to improve the service.
The TransPennine Express contract comes to an end in May, so I am already looking at what needs to be done with Bernadette and team with regards to that contract. On a weekly basis, I have all of the data relating to what they're doing to turn matters around.
Eventually, we arrive in Manchester, a journey in excess of 2 hours. Returning to Leeds was timetabled to take 49 minutes. But we crawled back to Yorkshire, stopping and starting due to an engine problem. Another hour and a half to cross the Pennines on TransPennine Express. Spencer Stokes, BBC Look North.
Some news in brief now. The man has appeared in court charged with threatening behaviour after eggs were thrown at the King during a visit to York in November. The King and Queen Consort had travelled to York to unveil a statue of the Queen when 4 eggs were thrown from the crowd. 23-year-old Patrick Thelwell pleaded not guilty to a public order offence and he'll stand trial in April. North Yorkshire's fire service has been rated inadequate at efficiently keeping people safe from fires. Inspectors say they have concerns about the ability to respond to fires and the service needs urgent improvements. It was also rated inadequate for the way it looks after its staff. North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue says it has made changes since this inspection.
Report it was last April, last springtime, and now we are in much better place with a really robust action plan, and I have full confidence in the Chief Officer team to be able to deliver that.
What I can assure the public that whatever situation they are in, whenever they dial 999 for the fire service, we will always respond Even in the remote rural locations, we move appliances around the county at all times to make sure we provide the appropriate level of fire cover across the county.
An independent panel has failed to pinpoint a conclusive cause for the mass deaths of shellfish along the North East and North Yorkshire coastline. The local fishing industry has said it's been devastated by the deaths, which have taken place since October 2021. The government had said algae was responsible, but a report published by independent experts today said this was unlikely. They say a new disease or parasite or a combination of factors could be the cause. Now, could the government's new strike legislation cost them their new MPs in South Yorkshire? Doncaster, Rotherham, Barnsley and Sheffield have some of the highest levels of union membership in England. Whereas the proposed new laws might go down well in other parts of the country, nearly a third of people here are part of a union. Our political editor, James Vincent, has been having a look.
We've filmed quite a few picket lines over the last few months, and our cameras are on charge for a fair few more in 2023. It's easy to think unions are a bit old-fashioned, something from the 70s or 80s related to Yorkshire's industrial heritage.
That's it, it's closed, we've got to move on.
Some of those industries aren't here anymore. But unions are. And there's no stronger example of that than South Yorkshire. Union membership in England is just over 20%. In Yorkshire and the Humber, that rises to 26%. But here, in South Yorkshire, over 30% of people are in a trade union.
There might be a legacy effect associated with the industrial heritage of the country as a whole. There's a large proportion of workers who are employed in manufacturing still in South Yorkshire, and also a relatively large proportion employed in public services.
South Yorkshire has the most unionised workforce in England. Over 60% of them here have a trade union presence. So the majority of people in South Yorkshire can see union activity in their workplace. That's despite the numbers of union members going down in Yorkshire over the last 30 years.
Our helpline inquiries were up by 400%. In our office in particular in Leeds, we've had a quadrupling of people ringing in saying, which union can I join?
Some younger people in Sheffield are just doing it themselves.
Yeah, most people are probably already doing the first step. It's just realising that, oh, actually, if we're all thinking this and we've all got the same problems, why don't we do something about it together?
Annie and Nick in Sheffield helped themselves and their colleagues get better pay in the hospitality industry.
We were able to get a 44% pay rise, which was across all staff over the age of 18. Rotas were released in 2 weeks rather than 2 days. We had PPE to do proper cleaning jobs, and the 0-hour contracts were over with guaranteed hours every week, which is all we wanted really, job security and to be able to be safe at work.
We're a group of workers working together. We've all got the same problems, we're all facing the same issues in the same workplace. It makes complete sense to address these as a collective, and we want collective solutions. These aren't individual problems we're facing.
The government's new strike legislation may well bring in minimum service levels and even see workers losing their jobs for striking.
We do not want to use this legislation, but we must ensure the safety of the British public.
This is not about actually keeping minimum levels of service or minimum levels of safety. This is about the government trying to protect themselves from the criticism they so rightly deserve.
It hasn't gone down well with union members, and remember, union members make up nearly a third of voters here in South Yorkshire. Something for Conservatives here to think about. Will this new strike legislation affect some of the seats that they won for the first time in 2019?
Yeah, plenty to think about, and there will be more on this on Politics North on Sunday. Now we're on to some sport, and Leeds triathlete Jess Learmonth says she thought at times last year her career was over. She went from winning gold in Tokyo to not even being able to walk with a serious hip injury. She's now on the comeback trail and hopes to qualify for the Games in Paris. She's been talking to Tanya.
When you go from competing at the Olympic Games and then the next minute you can't walk for 6 months, it's quite a big change in a short period of time, and I think everything that was changing so quickly, so the weight gain, the muscle loss, the becoming unfit is like you're losing your sense of who you are because you're a triathlete, or you know, all I do is sports.
Alex, she is the Olympic champion. Jess Learmonth is the Olympic champion.
In Tokyo in 2021, Jess Learmonth was part of the mixed relay team that won gold. 2022 should have been a great year to build on that, but in the end, it was a write-off.
I competed early on in May in Singapore, and my hip actually went in the race, and then from that point on I was on crutches for just less than 6 months and I didn't do anything. So yeah, my whole year, well, certainly the racing year, I just spent sat at home and not doing much at all. It's weird to just go from such a high and then just literally be taken off the face of the triathlon world. And you lose a lot of your social life as well, because obviously most of your social life is with triathletes and they're so busy that you don't hear from them, so I didn't hardly see anybody in triathlon world. I'm lucky that I've got John, my partner, who's I met at school, and we've got friends outside of the sport, so I'm very lucky, but I think it's quite difficult for some athletes that don't have that interaction.
It must be a hell of a long comeback trail after 6 months of really doing absolutely nothing.
I remember, like, every year we have 3 weeks off and you come back and you're like, I'm so unfit. And like when the guys are coming back now, I'm like, listen, you're not, because 6 months is a big difference. Like, I'm definitely getting there with the swimming now, and the riding. It's just the running, because I've started running, but I've not run for 9 months, so it's a long, long time.
Qualification for Paris starts later this year. Obviously she wants to be there, but the past few months have given her perspective.
I just know that if I didn't have triathlon, I've got a lovely life and a happy life outside of that, so knowing that makes it a lot easier. So having that support has meant a lot to me, I think.
Oh, the highs and lows of sport. We wish Jess well. Now I have some company tonight. Look at these beautiful faces. Well, we've all seen them, the preening beauties beloved by the Kennel Club, strutting their pedigree stuff at dog shows. But what about those pooches unblessed by exclusive breeding? When do they get their moment of glory? Well, soon, it seems. A competition to find the ugliest dog in Britain has 3 dogs from Yorkshire on its shortlist, and they've already become social media stars. Kathy Killick's been to meet them.
Not much of a dog, no sight for sore eyes.
Less crufts than scruffs. Meet the Yorkshire contenders for the dubious title of ugliest dog in Britain. First up, the optimistically named Bella, a 6-year-old pug from Sheffield, and her owner Shannon.
So I was looking for pugs that needed rehoming, and I stumbled across Bella. She was the cheapest dog on the website. They wanted hardly anything for her. She was very, very chunky when I got her, and I just fell in love with her little picture straight away. She will lay in my arms like a baby with her legs up in the air. She's just so relaxed, and she just loves to have cuddles.
By contrast, meet Roger and his unforgettable eyes. He's a year-old Pugapoo and something else from Brighouse, with the energy of a firecracker.
Initially, he was just a cute puppy, really, and then obviously he's got them blue eyes that are just absolutely gorgeous, and I just got sent a picture of him and fell in love with him straight away. He's cute, but he's not. He's just an ugly little boy. I love him. I'm happy for him. He doesn't, like I say, he doesn't know what's going on. I'm really happy for him.
Do you think he knows he's ugly?
No, I think he thinks he's gorgeous.
But the dog to beat is undoubtedly Peggy from Beverley. She's also some kind of pug and dearly loved, at least by her owner.
She's just lovely. She's just really gentle, really laid back, sleeps a lot, snores a lot. She fits in well.
Peggy's photos have made the shortlist, along with Marnie from Wiltshire, Winston George from the West Midlands, Jazz from North Wales, our friends Bella and lively little Roger, and finally Milo from Kent. The winner will win a photo shoot from organisers Parrot Print. So who's your favourite to win? And maybe they're all winners anyway, proving once and for all that love is blind and looks don't matter.
Not much of a dog, but everything to me.
Kathy Killick, BBC Look North.
Oh, aren't they absolutely beautiful? And Peggy's fashion sense, Keely, I tell you what, top of the tree for that.
Absolutely. I feel like that's cruel.
Well, I think it's kind of a celebration of how
individual
special they are.
How they should be individual.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Let's celebrate individuality.
Reframe it. Exactly. Yes. All right, let's have a look at some photos that have been coming in over the last 24 hours. Sunrise on the Stainforth and Keelby Canal. The second picture, I like this one, some icicles on Barden Fell in Wharfdale. Of course, it has really been quite chilly. And a lovely end to the day in West Yorkshire there. You can keep your pictures coming in to the BBC Weather Watchers page. You can tweet me at Keely Donovan, or I'm on Instagram, Keely.Donovan. Well, the cold weather is set to continue for now. I think the weekend will certainly be cold with overnight frosts. And we are expecting some mist and fog to develop both Saturday and Sunday night. And some of it could turn out to be quite dense and struggle to lift on both Saturday and Sunday morning. So we do have a warning out for that. The most prone spots at the Vale of York and the Vale of Pickering. There is, though, a lot of settled weather to come over the next few days. I think gradually we'll pick up more of a southwesterly flow, so slightly less cold by the time we get to Monday, and then those temperatures creeping up as we head through Tuesday and Wednesday. But it does look largely dry until we move through the day on Wednesday, and there will be some rain then. There's been a few showers out there. There still could be one or two for the North York moors. This is the radar picture from earlier. You can see a few of those showers to the coast. If there is still the odd shower out there, they will tend to ease, and we're looking at dry conditions through this evening and overnight. Long clear spells and a light breeze, a lighter breeze than last night, and that will allow some patchy mist and fog to develop. And yes, there could be some dense patches in places. And we're also looking at the risk of some ice on untreated roads and pavements as well, with temperatures falling quite a few degrees below freezing, a colder night compared with last night. Your high water times then at 3:10 in Whitby and at around 3:45 in Bridlington. So we'll start the day with, yes, perhaps some mist and fog patches. Some of these could be dense and linger through the day. Also some icy stretches. But essentially it's a dry, fine winter's day. Cold out there, but with a light breeze and plenty of crisp winter sunshine. Temperatures only lifting to around 3 or 4 degrees. So a shade cooler than today, and it'll be even colder as we head into Sunday. So a widespread frost into Sunday. Again, the risk of those dense fog patches in places. There'll be more cloud around on Sunday, and I think it'll feel raw. Slightly less cold on Monday. Those temperatures creeping up to above average as we head through next week. Some rain around on Wednesday. Amanda.
I tell you what, my hot water bottle's doing overtime at the moment.
Is it? That's very exciting for you.
It's living the dream, I tell you. Anyway, probably too much information. That's it from us. Do have a lovely weekend. We'll be back with your late news and weather tonight after 10 o'clock. Goodbye.